Cello, how you doing? Well, yep, that's right. I said cello. That was something that apparently was popular. My cousin used to do it in the 80s when he would speak on mics like this. And I think he was taking it from something that was popular in school, but I don't know. Maybe it was just some weird thing my cousin was doing. So yeah, this is my second attempt to do this video. I realized this mic was unplugged. Yes, I have a new mic. Don't know if it's worth it to have this. I realized from watching the first failed attempt at this that I have to keep it near my mouth, so I'll try to do that. And I really feel like singing like a lounge singer with this mic. So it's a little weird, I know. This is just trying new things here. I thought the audio was kind of weak. Going through the my webcam mic. So we're trying a real mic. I don't think it's making a lot of difference, honestly. think I'm still probably too quiet, but what are you gonna do? So let's get right into it. After 5 minutes of wasting your time, we're gonna go right into Pats Jets. And the problem with the Pats Jets is that we are looking at a much tougher game than people realize. Spread is 13.5 points. That is reflective of a betting population that has no idea the dire straits that the team is in. So let's get right to it on that front. The big news, of course, Matt Collins on IR, gone for 4 weeks. If we get the number one seed, he can't come back until the Super Bowl. If we get the number two seed, he comes back in the AFC Championship game. So at least one silver lining. If we don't get the one seed, we get Matt Collins back for the AFC Championship game. But pretty devastating. We're losing a guy here who was a huge part of the offense, very reliable, experienced, had a good connection with Drake May, could go up and make those catches high in the air. I do kind of wonder how he got injured. Um, it didn't look. I didn't see any play that looked that bad. Is they saying is an abdomen injury? Is this like a oblique issue or? I don't know what an abdomen injury. They're very intentionally obfuscate the details on these injuries. So you have no idea what an abdomen injury means. You'd think that a wide receiver would be able to play through an abdomen injury, but somehow that's not what we're seeing. So, yeah, we lose one of Drake May's favorite targets, guy who's been consistent all year. I think he had at least one 100-yard game this season. And one of also just tough to lose a big target like that. And you look at what's behind him, and it's like, well, Kyle Williams. I mean, Kyle Williams, I was getting excited about him after last week. But he's a very different type of target than Matt Collins. Matt Collins is a big target. Kyle Williams is a small target. Matt Collins runs good routes. Kyle Williams can get separation. Matt Collins very experienced. Kyle Williams very green. They're two different receivers, so it doesn't really feel like a one-to-one trade. We're getting kind of a different look to our offense with more Kyle Williams and less Matt Collins. It's gonna hurt. Losing Matt Collins hurts. But we do call up Jeremiah Farms in Matt Collins' place. I think he helps out a lot. I'm a fan of Farms. He managed to get, I think, 1.5 sacks, they were saying, in very limited playing time, which shows you he's a capable pass rusher, which is always good to have. He's always looked pretty good in his calls up from the practice squad. So it's good to have Farms on hand, and I think he'll be a big part of the defense against the Jets. But there's no doubt this hurts, and I sure hope we make it to the AFC Championship game so we get a chance to play Matt Collins play again. But anyway, let's take a look at that injury report because it is devastating, and that is the real thing. Is big question is going to be, can we survive the let's see, I'm going to have to look, can we survive this the triage unit that's become our team after that Baltimore game. So let's go to the injury report and go over the list. Now, first of all, with Hollins out, that's our first wide receiver down. Then we've got Keishon Boutte also down. So that's a little scary, Those are two of our primary receivers. Williams can sort of cover for one of them, but it's like, who's left? No Hollins, no Boutte. That leaves us with Chisholm, who's coming up. Okay, we got a guy who's barely played this year. He might have a handful of catches at best. Certainly no plays that are memorable on the season. And we got Diggs, of course. At least we've still got our big guy coming off such a good game against Baltimore. Who knows if he'll be able to turn it up to the same level? He probably would have to. I expect, I do expect him to get a few balls to Kyle Williams, and maybe the other thing is even Pop Douglas is questionable, so that's the real scary thing. Pop Douglas has a hamstring issue. We're looking at a gimpy Pop Douglas, Diggs, Kyle Williams, and Chisholm. I mean, this is not our usual receiving core. And of course, you've got the tight end group, Hunter Henry, Hooper, and Dupre. I expect to see at least Henry and Hooper involved heavily. I wonder if we'll see more of Dupre. We've been hearing about Dupre since the preseason. Like to see him get involved. He's supposed to have some pass catching ability. Maybe they throw the ball to Ramondre and Travion a little bit too. But I don't know. Someone was mentioning that maybe they make Mac Jones into a receiver for a play or two. That would be exciting. I'd certainly go for that. But it seems as if you kind of wonder, are they going to go to 12 personnel? I just learned what that is, the three tight ends. Maybe we'll play this one in 12 personnel a bunch and bring all three tight ends in at the same time. That could be interesting. And I'm intentionally ignoring Westover, who I don't know why that guy's even on the team. I mean, guy doesn't do anything. I'd rather see Dupre out there than Westover. But anyway, we don't need to focus on that. So yeah, we've got problems with the receiving core. It's scary. Aside from that, Jarrett Wilson back out again. He was out up until recently, and then is now out once again. At least he has a concussion. On the positive side, with Boutte having concussion protocol, Jarrett Wilson having concussion protocol, both those guys should come back. Maybe if not by Miami, then by playoff game 1. So at least it's not the end of the world with those two. But certainly, concussions are not good for the players involved, obviously, and they can create sort of a brain fog that lasts even beyond the time that they are able to get through the protocol. So not ideal, but at least it's not season ending, we know. Milton Williams, thought maybe he was going to make a return this week. Glad that they're not rushing him back. I hope we see him in the Dolphins game. I think it would be a little scarier if he doesn't make it back till the first game of the playoffs. Tonga, I think they said 1 to 2 weeks. My guess is we probably won't see him till first game of the playoffs. But again, we're missing Williams and Tonga. So, two major forces against the run there. That's bad, and it only gets worse when you see Harold Landry out. And this one's the one that scares me a bit because we know Landry's had problems with his knee all year. I was kind of hoping at the bye week that he would sort of get a chance to rehab a little bit and come back strong for the rest of the year, but it's only moving in the wrong direction. Now he's missing entire games because of the knee. How useful is Harold Landry going to be in the playoffs? I don't know. The same question kind of goes for Robert Spillane. Another huge player. Landry, probably our best pass rushing linebacker. Spillane, our best run defender and tackler as a linebacker. Hopefully, I don't know how bad they call Spillane's issue an ankle. You'd think Spillane, would be back, if not against Miami, then in the first playoff round, but it's a little scary. It's a little scary. You don't want to see your two best linebackers on the injury report in week 17. So I don't know. I know what to think about this. I guess if we have all these guys back, I'm going to be skeptical about Harold Landry even in the playoffs. I'm sure he's not going to be 100%. Hopefully, we get him back at all. Spillane, I would certainly hope, could be something close to what it used to be. Um, it's a mysterious injury. It's kept him out for. This will be the third week in a row for Spillane. I don't know. It's rough. It's rough at the end of the year. Hopefully, we can weather the storm against the Jets and the Dolphins. But this is a lot of guys that are hurt. And you go to the questionable side, and on the plus side, one of the very few pluses this week, as far as injury is concerned, Travion Henderson coming back. He did make it through concussion protocol. He'll be extremely useful, potentially. Demario Douglas, hamstring issue, concerning. He'll be an important part of whatever's left of our wide receiver core, but you can't push him too hard with that hamstring, so that's scary. And then Charles Woods looks like for cornerback depth. Looks like he may come back. It's gonna be on the plus. Also on the plus side, by the way, we got Dupre is fine. Morgan Moses is fine, which is surprising. He was wincing at the end of the last game. Thayer Munford, a guy who I didn't think was going to play into our success as time went on. Looks like Bryant is in the doghouse at the moment, not really doing it. Munford, this also ran guy that we got from the waiver wire, is a little bit better. So, it doesn't say much about Bryant. That this guy, this journeyman Munford, is playing better. And it looks like Carlton Davis is fine. The miracle bounce back kid, Carlton Davis, and then Anthony Jennings, who I didn't even hear he had any issues, so it's good to hear that he's going to be okay. Jennings at least will be picking up some of the slack in the linebacker core, I'd assume. But we're looking at a scary situation here. If all of our run stoppers are out, and we're going to have guys like Durden in there, we're going to have guys like Gregory in there, we got Farms in there, but you have to wonder how well they're going to be able to stop Breece Hall. And with Breece Hall, the Jets could run all over us. And I know that that's about their only weapon to really be afraid of. I'm certainly not afraid of Brady Cook. But you never know. The Jets don't have much else to play for. Of course, the Jets probably want to pick. So I guess, if anything, the Jets should be playing to lose. But, I think we win the game. But it's not going to be a blowout. I think that 13.5 spread is way too big. I think, on the back of Drake May and Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, we still managed to pull away with it. But my prediction, I think we'll have a hard time scoring without a lot of wide receivers in there. And I'm going to go with, you also wonder, by the way, who's going to be our kick returner if Kyle Williams is going to be used more as a receiver. Are they still going to have him returning kicks? We're about to find out. Maybe Travion Henderson does some kick returns. My prediction, I think, was going to be, it's tough. I don't want to go, I think I've got to go 23, let's say 23-13. That's what I'll call it. I could easily see it being, originally I was going to say 23-17. I don't know. I think 23-13 feels about right. I'll keep it there. It wouldn't shock me if it was even closer than that. But they're not going to cover the 13.5 point spread. I can almost promise you that. If they do, this team is better than I give them credit for. That's for sure. I mean, it's not even that the team isn't great. Just we're missing so many important pieces. I don't know. This should be an interesting game. We're going to see what kind of depth. People have talked about how our depth has sucked most of the year. We're going to see what our depth is made of right now. We're seeing some depth pieces that are way down and deep. And, who knows if the problems will continue to linger against the Dolphins next week. But certainly we're limping into the playoffs here. And that is a little bit concerning. So let's hope that they pull it out. I'm going to say 23-13. Going into hostile territory, I'm not too worried about that. They are road warriors. I doubt there'll even be many Jets fans there. I don't think the Jets care much about their team at this point. In fact, most of the Jets fans will probably be rooting for the team to lose, like we were last year near the end of the year. I was certainly rooting for the Patriots to lose near the end of the year, especially against the Bills. That game was a heartbreaker. Although in the end, it probably didn't make too much difference. Maybe we could have traded the pick, or who knows what would have happened. Anyway, so there you have it. Still expect the Patriots to win, but I think the amount at which everyone assumes that they're going to win this game. I mean, I'm listening to some of the Patriots official, sports gurus on the radio, and they just sort of take it as a foregone conclusion that we're going to take this game. And it's like, with half the team injured as badly as they are, do they really think it's going to be that easy? I don't know. I feel like this game is going to be nerve-wracking, So I'm a little concerned. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I'll call a Patriot 10-point win. That's probably even honestly. That's like, I want to change my prediction. Really, I feel like a 10-point win is a lot for a team that's this banged up. It's the Jets. Since I don't want to mess around with my prediction too much. I'll keep it 23-13. That's going to be my prediction. We'll see how it goes. One thing I wanted to get into, I wanted to take a look after the games today. I wanted to talk a little bit about potential playoff scenarios, because we're starting to see things take shape here, and I'll tell you how I see things panning out currently. So let's see here. Now remember, I just one last note. I'm not taking. I take the Jets as the pick, because Jets are getting 13.5. There's no way I think the Patriots win by 13.5. If they do, I'll gladly eat crow. But yeah, I think the Patriots win, but the Jets cover. Just to be clear. Okay, so here's what I figured out. Now, I like to look at things generally in terms of what's expected to happen. Obviously we could come up with a lot of different playoff scenarios, but the first thing I look at is, well, what look at all the rest of the games and sort of do, well, what do you think would happen based on what we see now? Big game today. Texans beat the Chargers. I think a lot of people think this is a really bad thing. Chargers no longer are battling for the AFC West. That's gone. Now they're just battling for playoff seeding. They don't have the motivation to beat Denver in the final game of the season, Week 18. And Denver will have a lot of motivation because they don't want to lose the number one seed, I'm sure. I'm sure they could use time to healing up, just like every team could use time healing up at this time of year. And statistically, historically, the one seed is good for moving as deep into the playoffs as possible. So I do think that Denver will beat the Chargers now, but let's take a look at what happens around all those types of things. First of all, let's say Chargers do manage to somehow beat the Broncos. Well, then we get the one seed if we win out. Now, I'm going to assume we're going to win both these games. As I said, I want to go with the automatic assumption. I think everyone's assuming that the Patriots are going to win these next two games against bad teams with backup quarterbacks. Even against the Jets, even in this game where half of our team is out, I still expect us to win. I think if the Jets had any kind of quarterback that they could believe in whatsoever, that there would be, you'd put some doubt in your mind they could win this game. I don't think that I think there's a very good chance this game could be close, but I think the Pats, you have to assume, are going to pull this out. I don't think the Jets are motivated to win, most importantly. So let's just say the Pats win out the next two games. We certainly expect that to be the case. Let's say Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville's next two games are against the Colts, who were eliminated today, and the Titans. Now, I'm going to assume that because the Colts are eliminated, that Phillip Rivers is not going to play. I feel like the Colts with Rivers, even though as old as he is, he's played so well in his two games that, if Phillip Rivers did play, I think the Colts would have a better chance of winning the last two games than if they start their whatever 6th-round quarterback pick. They have some terrible quarterback pick that some people are speculating will start over Rivers because the Colts will want to see what they have to work with in this kid, which is probably not much. And I would think that Philip Rivers would be somewhat embarrassed finishing out a season with a team that had no chance to win. The whole reason why they got him out of retirement was because they were hoping that the Colts, would be able to salvage their season after the unmitigated disaster it became when Daniel Jones went down. That's over now. So the real question is, will Rivers finish out the year just because he's like, well, why should I got to finish what I started kind of a deal? Or is he just saying, oh, you know what, I came here to try to help the Colts, and, it's not going to happen. You wonder if will it be Philip Rivers who throws in the towel, or will it be the team that just tells Rivers, you know what, you can just sit on the sidelines, enjoy the game. Maybe Rivers will just quit altogether, be like, all right, that's it, I'm really retiring. That'll be an interesting thing to see play out. But regardless of whether Rivers plays or not, I think Jacksonville is better than the Colts. And I'm pretty sure we all know Jacksonville's better than the Titans. So let's assume Jacksonville wins out, right? Then let's assume Texans only have one game left. If we're going to assume that Jacksonville beats the Colts, we should also assume the Texans want to beat the Colts. The Texans have a chance to beat Jacksonville. I think the scheduling of the Jacksonville game and the Texans game on the last week will say a lot. I think if they're hopefully they'll be scheduled for the same time and not one early and one late. If we want a team to be scheduled early, it's probably the let's see. Well, actually, we want both games to be scheduled at the same time. If either Jacksonville or Texans knows that one of them is eliminated from winning the division, and there's a chance that they rest their starters. We don't want that. So hopefully they both play at the same time. I don't think we want Jacksonville and the Texans to be motivated to win all their remaining games. And I think the Texans do beat the Colts. I think that's the biggest trick with this thing. This is a scenario that I've come up with where, again, I'm looking at all the most likely possibilities. And, the only thing that could throw this off would be if a team a surprise win that would throw everything off and have a team lose motivation. So, anyway, again, Pats are going to win their last two games. We're assuming that. We're assuming Jacksonville wins versus the Colts and the Titans. We're assuming the Texans beat the Colts. And let's finally assume now the last part of it is sort of a win-win situation. Either the Broncos. Either the Chargers beat the Broncos and we get the number 1 seed, or the Broncos, as I would expect, again, going by expectation, beat the Chargers, meaning that we finish with the 2 seed. Now, a lot of people are not super happy. A lot of people still desperately want the 1 seed. I'm going to tell you right now, the 2 seed isn't so bad, and here's why. So let's say the Broncos beat the Chargers in the last game of the year, as we probably expect at this point, because the Chargers are no longer as motivated. They cannot win the AFC West. I think the Chargers will still be motivated to win, to prove to Denver that they have a shot. That they're a force to be reckoned with. Denver doesn't feel like they're a pushover if they happen to meet later in the playoffs, but Chargers are banged up. I could also see them resting guys, so who the hell knows. But anyway, let's say the Broncos beat the Chargers. That means that if everything else goes according to the expectations, based on what I've said, based on the fact that the Colts will probably be done for, and the only other game is Jacksonville beating the Titans, which could probably happen even if Jacksonville rested their starters. Then let's see. That would mean that the seeding would go Denver 1, Patriots 2, Jaguars 3, Steelers or Ravens 4. I'm going to assume that the Steelers are going to win against Cleveland. So let's just say that it's the Steelers. I'm not going to refer to the Steelers/Ravens. I think things change a little, makes it more interesting if the Ravens do make it, but that matters more to Buffalo than it does to us. So let's say the Steelers win. I think the Steelers beat Cleveland this weekend because they'll be highly motivated to avoid a showdown with Baltimore for the last playoff spot. So let's say Steelers win this weekend. That means the Steelers would be 4, Five is would be the Bills. If assuming the Bills win out, this is the other part of it. Is that this is the trickier part. The Bills winning out not guaranteed, but let's say that the Bills are five, Texans are six, Chargers are seven. All right. I think the Bills will win out. I think the Bills, I know Patriots fans are rooting for the Eagles to win. The Eagles certainly could win tomorrow, but the game is in Buffalo. Um, the Eagles have been sort of inconsistent this year. Bills are a pretty good team at home. Still got Josh Allen. Eagles don't have a huge amount of motivation to win this game. Bills still going for the AFC East. I see the Bills winning. Things could change. The math gets a little wonky if the Bills don't win. But I'm going to assume the Bills do win that game against Philadelphia. And after that, you'd have Bills 5. That would make the I gotta reload this. Texans would be 6, and Chargers would be 7. That's how I expect it to pan out. Now, what does that mean? Well, let me go back to my scenario here. So that means that you've got two teams, starting teams would be Pats and face the Chargers. Now, first of all, I'm very happy that I think that the Texans beating the Chargers might be a blessing in disguise, because up until that point, the Texans were the 7th seed, and there was a good chance we were going to face the 7th seed. Now that doesn't seem. Now the Chargers. It looks as if either we'll be the 1 seed or we'll face the Chargers. That's looking like the only two potential outcomes here. Either way, things are fine. I think we can beat the Chargers. If we have the bye week, then that would be great for resting up all the injured players we have. It would also mean we wouldn't get Matt Collins back until the Super Bowl, which would stink. But I certainly expect that we could beat the Chargers. Now, let's say we beat the Chargers for argument, because if we don't beat the Chargers, then there's no reason to talk about this anymore. That would leave you with Jacksonville facing the Texans. Now, that to me is a win-win. Either the Jacksonville, one of the hottest teams in the league, gets eliminated, or one of the two best defenses in the league in the Texans gets eliminated. That could be very helpful. Then on the other side of it, you've got the Bills probably beat the Steelers, if that's the case. And then we move on to the next round would be, you think about it, well, let's see. If the Texans beat the Jaguars, then the Texans play Denver, which means two best defensive teams. We don't have to face one of the two best defensive teams in the AFC. And we would face the Bills, and that would be the ultimate challenge for us, would be Patriots-Bills. And, some people really dread having to face Josh Allen, and I get it. Facing Josh Allen in the playoffs is going to be scary. But you know what? We know we can beat Josh Allen. And honestly, if by the time we beat the Bills, we've seen that 2 out of 3 of the Jags, the Texans, and the Broncos are gone. 2 out of those 3 are going to be gone. I don't mind our chances to beat any one of those teams that's left. I think, in my mind, the Texans are almost really the best other team in the AFC. I'd say the Broncos are pretty close, and then I'd put the Jaguars behind both of them. In fact, I'd probably put the Bills ahead of the Jaguars. I think I'll go. In my mind, the Bills, I guess, are pretty scary too. So I'd say, Texans, Bills, and Broncos, all scary teams. Don't want to face any of those. Next tier, Jags don't scare me as much. Maybe they should. I don't know. They've been very good. And then you've got the Steelers and Chargers bringing up the rear. So, you know, if we end up having to beat the Chargers, and then we only have to face really, we'll end up having to face two of those teams out of between the Bills, the Texans, and the Broncos. We'll have to face two of those three teams, which is rough. But I don't know. This is all getting very complicated. Let me just read what I say. Let me just read what I wrote here because my mind is boggling with when I start talking about it. I said, let's assume we beat the Chargers in round one. Texans will face the Jaguars. That means either the scariest defense or the hottest team in the AFC is eliminated. Either way, it's a win that we don't have to face one of them. Bills will face the Steelers or Baltimore. I think the Bills will be their team. As I mentioned, if the Texans beat the Jags, they go on to face the Broncos. That means not only the Jags would be eliminated, but one of the two best defenses in the AFC. We would then likely face the Bills. It would be no picnic, but if we can beat them, round three would come with the huge benefit that 2 out of 3 of the Jags, Texans, and Broncos would be eliminated for us. If the Jags beat the Texans, then we face the Jags, while the Broncos take on the Bills for us, which isn't too shabby either. Because, again, both the Broncos and the Bills scary. In this situation, if we make it to round three, then 2 out of 3 of the Texans, Bills, and Broncos would be eliminated, which is also not such a bad situation. So we're going to have to beat, I guess I'm not saying anything that's surprising. We have to beat 2 good teams to make it to the Super Bowl. We don't have to beat 3, I suppose. Is what I'm trying to get across here. And there's even a good chance maybe we only have to beat, one really good team and one pretty good team. If we have to face the Jaguars, let's say Jaguars beat the Texans, then we face the Jaguars and Denver faces the Bills. Well, then we're looking at beating the Chargers, the Jaguars, and either the Bills or Broncos. That's really the Bills or Broncos are the only team in that group that really scare me. If 2 of our 3 playoff games can come against the Chargers and the Jaguars, I think we have a good shot at making it to the Super Bowl. So I'm really hoping that if we don't get the 1 seed, that we get the 2 seed and everything stays exactly as it is now, because I think that is the most ideal situation. On the other side of it, if we manage to lose one of these 2 games and Buffalo takes the division, things get a lot more sketchy, I think. Because then we drop to number 5, where the Bills would be. Ideally, we wouldn't drop below that. If we lost both games, we could even drop behind the Texans, which would be a nightmare. Potentially. But let's say we lose one of our 2 games and Buffalo wins the division. Buffalo wins out. Then we're looking at playing the Steelers in game 1, which would be fine. But at that point, then it's kind of like, well, I think that the chances of us having to face either the Texans or the Broncos early on would increase a lot if we don't win the division. So I think winning the division is very important. I'm not even going to go into it. I think I just don't want to see us become a wild card team. From what I can tell, if everything goes according to plan, and we don't finish with the 1 seed, this is going to be a solid 2 seed. The way things are working out, and I have some amount of confidence that things will work out well in that situation. And I think the most important thing is we don't want to face the Broncos and the Texans. We don't want to face the Bills and the Broncos, or the Bills and the Texans. Ideally, we could only face one of those 3 teams: the Broncos, Bills, and the Texans. I'd like it if we only have to beat one of those 3 teams. Chances are not good that that'll be the case. I think all 3 of those teams can beat the Patriots. I don't see the Jaguars as being able to beat the Patriots. I don't see the Steelers as being able to beat the Patriots anymore. Even though they did earlier in the year, and I don't see the Chargers as being able to beat the Patriots. So I think the goal we're looking for here is to only have to play one of those 3 top teams: Broncos, Texans, and Bills, to get to the Super Bowl. But we'll see. I don't know if there was any reason for me to go over all that. You know, all I wanted to say was that if we get the number 2 seed, I still feel pretty good about the team. Not having the extra week to recover. Hopefully, I mean, at the very least, I hope that we manage to keep the injuries to a minimum going forward. Any more injuries in either of these last 2 games, and it's already bad. We could be seeing could easily end up with an early exit just based on injury problems alone. You know, I really don't see them losing to the Chargers, but maybe they do. If we shouldn't take Harbaugh and Herbert for granted either. With enough injury problems, I think we could be susceptible even to the Chargers, even as mediocre as they look today. So 2 must-win games I think here, and got to get healthy and got to avoid any future injuries. And if we can achieve that, I see good things for the team. But Mac Hollins being out, lack of pass receiving options. I hope we get to see a little bit of Marcus Jones on the offense. That would be a lot of fun. But this is a big game this week and a big game next week. Next week will probably be even harder because if the injury problems remain and we have to go against Achan, I mean, Brees Hall is one thing. Achan, even better. Scarier back to me. We just gotta hope that we can stuff the box with the backups we've got and force them to throw with their crappy quarterbacks. And see if we can generate enough offense with a lot of backup wide receivers. It's scary. It's scary. I think there's some good things. There's some things to be optimistic about. But like I said, it would really help if we could win both these games and win the division. So, hoping the game is not too painful tomorrow. Could see some, at the very least, I think it'll be exciting seeing some guys that don't get a lot of playing time have a shot to prove what they're worth. And maybe, if we did end up getting pieces back healthy by the playoffs, maybe some of these guys that don't play very often, guys like Farms, like Chisholm, like, some of the Durden and Pettis, all these guys, well, I guess Pettis I should have mentioned him because the safeties are fine, but some of these guys can prove that they're assets. I think the only guys I'm really excited to see that didn't get a lot of chance to play are Chisholm, maybe more Kyle Williams, and Dupre. I hope they included Dupre in the office. I want to see if this guy's got anything worth noticing. And it'll be good to see Farms play again too. But scary times as a Pats fan. It's almost hard because we're in such a good situation. It's so much better than what we imagined. That on one hand you feel spoiled, but on another hand, you can sort of see this whole thing built on a house of cards with our potential lack of depth, and with injuries that we really are totally in the dark about. And it makes you wonder, what kind of an ending of a season are we looking at here? And Hollins being out is just the latest huge blow, and you hope that won't be the death of us. But go Pats! I'm gonna hope that this is I don't want us to back into this. I don't want to see Buffalo lose to Philly. I want us to win both our games remaining in the year and make a statement. I'd like to see the playoff seeding either stay the same or have the Pats move to the number 1 seed. So let's say go Pats. Be up tomorrow watching the game. Should be one of the least watched games of the day by anyone other than Patriots fans. I don't even think Jets fans will bother to look at it for the most part. And they really won't, the Jets fans won't get anything out of it anyway, even if they do. If the Jets wins, they'll be pissed, and if the Jets lose, they won't have much to get excited about. So, yeah, go Pats. Let's take this thing home. We got 2 games left. Let's finish as strong as we can with the also Rens and nobodies we got playing, And let's get to the playoffs, get healthy, and make a run here. Whether we finish first and second, things are looking up as long as the health comes, and that's the real key point there. But go Pats.